On this channel, I've covered the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation Vita, and the original PlayStation game prices, so it only makes sense to cover the PlayStation 2 prices, right? Are they going to be as crazy as the other Sony platforms? Well, find out on this episode of Retronomics. Welcome to Retronomics, the series that follows price trends in video games, and today we're taking a look at the PlayStation 2. Now, this system has made a lot of contributions to the gaming landscape. It was the first system in a very long time to offer backwards compatibility with its previous iteration, and most importantly, it was an incredibly cheap DVD player, and it was my first DVD player, and I'm sure for a lot of you watching, it was yours as well. But the ability to play PlayStation 1 games and DVDs is fine, but what about PlayStation 2 games? Well, those are pretty great too. The PlayStation 2's DVD drive meant expansive games that were a graphical leap forward compared to the original PlayStation and set the standard for video games for the next 2 decades. And over those 2 decades, PlayStation 2 games have had spikes in price, with some games going for over $500. There aren't as many expensive games as, say, the Sega Saturn, but still, it's not your bargain bin console. We'll get into forecasting PlayStation 2 game prices in just a minute, but first, here's how Retronomics works. I get all of my price data from pricecharting.com, and I also take a look at eBay sold listings to make a determination on where the price will go. Will it go up, down, or stay the same? All games are complete in box, and their North American versions are the ones that I forecast. The prices are accurate as of the recording of this video, which is August 18th, 2021. So if you're late to the game, make sure you subscribe for future content so you never miss an episode. And with that out of the way, let's get into some PlayStation 2 stats. Since July of 2020, 410 PlayStation 2 games listed on pricecharting.com saw an increase in price of at least 40%. Out of those items, 41 games saw their price increase by at least double. Notable increases were Tulip, which increased $142 since last year, which is almost 200%. The other non-collector edition game that raised dramatically in price was Echo Night Beyond, which I'll talk about later in this video. Last year, only 23 games were $100 or more, and now, as of the recording of this video, 42 games are over $100. So now, let's get into some actual individual game prices. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 released 2 years after the Dreamcast version, and Marvel vs. Capcom 2 goes through spikes and dips, and now we're in a spike, mainly because of the hashtag FreeMVC2 campaign led by Maximilian Dood. The game used to be available digitally, which kept the price in check, and it's been unavailable for 7 years now. Assuming that Marvel is now a Disney property, it'll be unlikely that we'll get a re-release, but Capcom did manage to get DuckTales remastered back digitally, so maybe public pressure will get Marvel vs. Capcom 2 back as well. But for now, expect this game to maintain its value with a steady drop back down to its baseline of around $100. Castlevania Curse of Darkness is the second 3D Castlevania game, and it's raised in value over the past year, and it's starting to come back down. It could be a rush to scoop up these titles of popular franchises to see what sticks. The 3D Castlevanias aren't as loved as the Metrovania and the original Castlevania games, but these still seem to have a cult following. This game has been increasing in value steadily over the past year, but it's now falling back down. It's also available for the original Xbox, so it is a strong possibility that this game's price will keep in check. Kuan is a survival horror game on the PlayStation 2, and it's published by From Software, so be prepared to shell out some serious cash for this game. These games are sought after by a lot of people, and the PlayStation 2 era has a ton of survival horror games, and they didn't really sell all that well when they were new. This game is hovering around $750, and going forward, it's a safe bet that we'll never see a copy go up for less than $500 again. especially since we probably won't see a re-release. Mr. Mosquito is a peculiar game. You play as a mosquito looking to do what mosquitoes do, suck blood. And even though it's a goofy game, it's actually not that expensive for what it is. Obviously, price is subjective, but as far as rare games go, especially on this list, it's a fairly reasonable and obtainable price, with some copies going for well below what price starting has it listed for. I'd pick this game up as quick as possible because it might be prone to spikes in the future. Dark Cloud is an action RPG that hasn't seen a new entry since Dark Cloud 2, yet it is still pretty affordable, dancing between $10 and $15, probably because it is available digitally on the PlayStation 4. The sequel is twice the price, but still pretty affordable for the series. I would buy it now with no regrets. Mega Man X8 used to be expensive 4 years ago, but now that the Legacy Collection is available on modern platforms physically, the price of this game has plummeted. Once going for $45 at its peak in 2017, Mega Man X8 can now be found for less than $15. If you're into PlayStation 2 collecting and like Mega Man games, you can't go wrong picking this up now. Rogue Galaxy is a 3D action RPG game meant to take on Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, and it didn't go quite as planned, but that means that you can pick this game up for quite the deal. I don't really see that this game is going to take off anytime soon, as RPGs were a dime a dozen on the PlayStation 2, and they usually lay undervalued until someone decides that it's the best game since sliced bread. It did spike when the PlayStation 3 store was shutting down, but it is plummeting back to pre-pandemic levels, so I'd pick it up now or wait, it's your choice. Next up, Klonoa 2. Like I said in my PlayStation 1 video, Klonoa is having sort of a renaissance as of late, and this title peaked at $153 and it's on its way back down, but it might level out around $100. Definitely cheaper than the first one, but time will tell if it spikes up as much as the first Klonoa, but this isn't one on the PlayStation Store, so it might be a good idea to buy it now rather than later. Wild Arms 5 is an RPG published by Xseed, and it's part of a popular series, so that means that the price of this game has been steadily increasing since the start of the pandemic, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. I don't think that this game is particularly rare, but with that Xseed logo, it might hold its value for the foreseeable future, so it might be a good idea to buy it now before it gets too out of control. Normally I tell people to wait when games get this high, but it hasn't plateaued since the pandemic, and not too many games that I've covered in my Retronomics series have done that. Echo Knight Beyond is the sequel to Echo Knight on the PlayStation 1, and like Echo Knight, this game is published by From Software. It looks like all of the From Software titles are seeing a price bump, and this is no different. Like Wild Arms 5, this game has been steadily climbing in value since the beginning of the pandemic, and it doesn't look like it's going to slow down. Expect this game to be above $200 for the foreseeable future, and I would probably pick it up now before it gets too expensive. Dot Hack Quarantine is the fourth game in the popular PlayStation 2 series. It's an interesting concept. It's based off an anime series of the same name, and you go into an MMORPG even though you don't actually go online in real life. The rest of these games are reasonably priced, but Quarantine, this one has gone bonkers as of late. It's always been an expensive title compared to the others, and as of the recording of this video, the price is volatile, with some selling for over $400 and some less than $300. This game is one to keep an eye on, and the game has always been sought after, and copies with the included anime DVD might be tough to find in the future if that's something that matters to you. God Hand is a beat 'em up by Capcom with a really interesting premise that has similar styling to Asura's Wrath for the PlayStation 3. The studio Clover Studio, which also developed Beautiful Joe, closed after this game was released, so I don't really see a re-release in the future. Games from defunct studios tend to fade into the ether, sadly. And you can still buy this game on the PlayStation 3 store, which could explain its spike this past May, but the price has dropped dramatically for the physical version since then, but it is slowly creeping back up. I don't see that this game will dip any lower than $100 anytime soon, so it might be in your best interest to buy this game sooner rather than later. Blood Will Tell is a game by Sega, and it's based off of an anime, and this game has been expensive for a while now. During the pandemic, the price just skyrocketed. I don't think that the game's prices will come back down anytime soon, if previous sold listings are any indication. So I do think it's safe to say that this will be the new baseline price for the foreseeable future, so I suggest buying it at a reasonable price now instead of waiting to see if it'll spike again. Final Fantasy X is an amazingly affordable game that's also critically acclaimed, and it hovers between $5 and $10. Sure, you can get it physically somewhere else on modern platforms, but you can't go wrong with this price, so I figured I'd highlight a game that was not only good, but inexpensive. Next up, Xenosaga Episode 3. The Xenosaga series is in the same universe as Xenogears for the PlayStation 1 and Xenoblade Chronicles for the Nintendo systems. With certain Xenoblade characters like Shulk in Smash Bros., there's been a renewed interest in the entire series, and that makes some of these games really sought after. The other two games in the Xenosaga series aren't that quite expensive, but the third Xenosaga game has gone bonkers since the start of the pandemic, and while it's always been the most expensive of the three because of its low print run and arguably it is the best of the trilogy, I don't really expect the price of this game to come back down anytime soon, so I would snag it if you find one for a price that you're comfortable with. WWE SmackDown, Here Comes the Pain. Now, I don't usually cover sports on this channel, but these games are pretty volatile and they almost are always in demand. Here Comes the Pain is the most expensive WWE game on the PlayStation 2 with crazy spikes throughout the pandemic. This game is on its way back down and it's not really particularly rare. I actually find these at Goodwill all the time and it's always worth the flip. The next game is Rule of Rose, and it wouldn't be a Retronomics episode if I didn't include a game published by Atlus. So is it any surprise that it's expensive? It's also a survival horror game, which adds another layer of a price to it. So don't expect Rule of Rose to drop below $500 consistently anytime soon. Atlus doesn't re-release their old games, and they have had notoriously low print runs to begin with. Time will tell if Rule of Rose will reach that grail status like Panzer Dragoon Saga for the Sega Saturn, but this game does have some quirks that might keep it from getting there in the next year. Katamari Damacy is another classic PlayStation 2 game that has been steady in value ever since price charting started tracking prices in 2013. I do remember that this game was hard to find for a while before that, but now there are several games out in the series, and even a remaster physically on the Switch, so I don't see that this game will go for a high dollar amount anytime soon. Just like with Final Fantasy X, this is an inexpensive, great game that will go great in anyone's collection. Next up, Def Jam Fight for New York. Now, I've covered this game several times on my GameCube Retronomic episode, so I thought that I would include the PlayStation 2 version here. And this version looks like it has chased the GameCube version price when it popped off. The Def Jam games probably aren't going to be remade anytime soon, so like the GameCube version, expect it to remain over $100 for the foreseeable future. So if you see one for a price that you like, pick it up now. King's Field: The Ancient City is a medieval-themed first-person role-playing game, and it was released early in the PlayStation 2's life cycle, so why is it so expensive? Well, it's published by From Software, and like I've mentioned previously in this video, their titles have been seeing a bump in price lately, and it's almost doubled in value since last year, and based on sold listings, it looks like it's finally slowing down in price, with each one selling for lower than the last. So I would keep an eye on this one because I think that we'll see it dip and then spike right back up before you know it. And the last game, Silent Hill 3. Now, Silent Hill games have gone sky high recently, and it's probably due to the recent survival horror kick that people have been having. It was under $50 for years until the pandemic, where it just got out of control. It is trending down in price, with some copies selling for less than $100, but not a lot going for that much. I think that the price will level out for a month or so until October, when spooky season is in full swing. So stay tuned for a special horror Retronomics video next month. So there you go, the PlayStation 2 forecast for August 2021. While prices are increasing over the past year, they aren't getting too out of control, at least when you compare other consoles. The PlayStation 2 still has a lot of great games that are very affordable. Are there some heavy hitters? Of course, but all consoles have them, and I don't think that it's time to start panic buying just yet. But if you were looking to relive the good old collecting days where you could get a ton of games in one go without having to eat salami sandwiches for the rest of the week, then the PlayStation 2 is a great system to collect for. If you like this video, give it a like and share it with those who might find it interesting. It is the best way to support this channel, and best of all, it is free to do so. Also, subscribe if you're new here and turn on notifications so you'll never miss an episode. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at snicktendo. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Super Nintendo, and I'll see you next time.